Yo, what's up? This is Mastermind MMA, and this is where we talk combat sports world and shit like that. Mostly the UFC, but if anything interesting in other promotions happen or kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, stuff like that, we'll talk about it. And I know UFC 197 is coming up, which is John Jones OSP as of now, and I'll have a video up about what I feel about that and how my thoughts about the belt and shit like that. Because I mean, they're calling that an interim belt, but if you know your shit, you know that's John Jones's belt, and it doesn't really matter what belt DC is because Jones already beat DC. Even if it doesn't even warrant a fucking rematch, but whatever. We know what that is. We'll talk about that later. But what I wanted to talk about today was UFC 199, which actually, in my opinion, is going to be a good card because I'm a I root for Team Cruz, Dominic Cruz, and I like Faber though, but nothing personal. I just think with everything Dominic Cruz has done in the MMA world that you got to give him that respect. And Faber's a good fighter, but his last fight I think was Frankie Saenz or something like that, and you know he had to go for a finish and he didn't get it, and then after that he looked really tired and it was just kind of like a decision, like he just really was gassed out after he couldn't get the finish, which he should have gotten. But anyway, and Cruz against Dillashaw, I thought Cruz winning the belt, he definitely put on a clinic. Like his fight IQ is on a whole nother level. So TJ Dillashaw was throwing, and Cruz just knew how to use his feints and get out the way, and his movement is on a whole nother level. I don't know why Cruz isn't getting that. I mean, I kind of get why Mayweather got his whole thing, but definitely people say Floyd Mayweather is the best defensive boxer, which I can agree with, but Dominic Cruz is the best defensive mixed martial artist of all time, in my opinion. And it's not even to a point where it's boring and he's just running, but it's kind of like a dance. Like he just dances around and then clocks you. Like even in the Dillashaw fight, he was hitting him with a nice like a hook, a uppercut, straight combo, like boom, boom, boom. And Dillashaw was getting tagged, and I forget at the end of what round it is. Maybe the third or fourth. I think it was the third round. Dominic rocked Dillashaw. TJ was rocked, and then the fucking round just ended. So, I mean, you could argue that Dominic could have finished the fight there. He threw a submission in there, which I mean, it was more of a setup. It didn't get locked in, but he still did it. But I mean, I honestly I thought at the end of that with the way that the decisions were going, like with Lawler Condit, which with Lawler Condit, I thought that watching that fight at the end of that, I was pretty happy with whoever won that fight, and because I mean I wasn't scoring it, I had Condit winning, but the way I think after Lawler lost to Hendricks that first fight, I think you the you saw Lawler in the second fight really turn it up in the fourth and fifth round, which definitely won him the belt. And with Rory, he finished that, and with Carlos, he turned it up in the fifth round, and I think that's really what gave him that decision. But yeah, so I almost forgot what I was talking about. But so, with Cruz, I think I have Cruz winning the trilogy with Faber, and Faber's lost to Edgar, which was in a different division, but he got slept by Barao, and you know, after Dom coming back the way he did, it was like it was pretty crazy. Oh yeah, I remember what I was gonna say, but the way that fight with Lawler Condit went, you know, with the decision, you with close fights, it was really up in the air about who's gonna win, and I honestly thought Dom won that fight, and I thought he actually won it in a unanimous decision, in my opinion. If I were to score it, but he won that fight, and I was afraid that they were gonna give it to Dillashaw. Not that I have anything against Dillashaw, but that fight kind of speaks for itself. It was a work of art almost by Cruz, the clinic he put on, and I think that Cruz wins, and you know that's gonna make I gotta check how many title wins for Dominic, but you know, in the sense of things, he never lost his belt. And to the main event, which is Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman 2, which I'm a fan of Chris Weidman. Hey, join the team. I joined the team. And you know, I'm from New York, East Coast baby. You know, what Weidman did at that press conference, that unstoppable press conference, which, you know, you know, people want to credit McGregor for it, but I think I wouldn't give the credit to Conor, but I think it's more of a people are like, yo, I'm going out of my way to come off as a not nicer person. Like, I shouldn't even say that, because I just think because with the perception of fighting and stuff, they have to come out extremely civilized, like, you know, people, you know, in the mainstream at least, like if like champions like John Jones, if he's just like out there all day talking shit, and then like he's spinning elbows a motherfucker to death, that like I guess in their head, like the PR team and shit like that probably warns against that. But once Connor was like quote unquote breaking gates and shit like that, and I think it was more of a persona thing, but people are like, yo, Connor, and it wasn't even the fact that Connor was like that and he just didn't give a fuck. It was more of a character he put on when the lights were on him. So I think people like John Jones show that, and people like that were like, yo, which in my opinion, John Jones is the greatest of all time. But he's just like, yo, if I'm just myself, like it is what it is. Like, fuck it. Like, whatever they're going to think of me is whatever they're going to think of me. And Dominic Cruz actually said, like, when he came back before the TJ fight, he was like, you know, like, when the cameras are on you in the beginning, you're just like very guarded. And then he said with the analyst work, he realized that no matter how respectful he's on the cameras, people are going to have their own whatever opinion they're going to have of him anyway, which in life is so true. So, you know, I think people realize they were just like, fuck it, I'm going to be who I am. And with that unstoppable press conference, let's talk about Chris Weidman. So I think, yeah, it was definitely 194. So at 194, when Chris and Luke fought the first time, I thought like, you know, that was kind of, I was just like on the edge of my seat a little bit, but you know, there wasn't a lot happening. You know, it doesn't seem like any of them really opened up to the fight we were expecting. Like, you know, it is Chris and Luke at their prime, and Weidman's first fight before that was the Vitor fight. And Vitor, I mean, I don't really believe in MMA math, but honestly, Vitor wheel kicked fucking Luke's face off, and he turned the pressure up on Weidman in the first round. Vitor did, and Chris just took him to the ground, and you know, ground and pounded and got the TKO finish. So I mean, honestly, and that was supposed to be the, you know what, fuck, I'm just gonna talk about the Jones Cormier OSP shit later in this video, but Luke, when he fought Chris, he said he had the staph infection and shit like that, which I'm not doubting. And Chris came out and said he had a broken foot, which I honestly don't have any reason not to believe Chris. And when he beat Vitor and he said join the team, I was pumped up after that. And I was like, and I definitely really rocked with Chris Weidman, especially like after the Silva wins. I know the second win wasn't as definitive as people would like because of the way it ended with his leg snapping in half, but not much you could do. And I know it was 2 losses, but I would definitely like to see Silva work his way up to a title shot, because if you think about it, Silva's only really lost to Weidman in the middleweight division, and in my opinion, he beat Bisping. And before that fight, I called Silva would win by knockout in the 3rd round, because I thought that it was going to take Silva the first few rounds to open up, and by the 3rd, he'd be like back to Anderson Silva fucking like taunting, like ducking and shit like that, which he was. And he landed that knee in the 3rd round at the end of it. And I know about the mouthpiece and shit, and I don't know if you saw the video. I forgot what it was, but Herb Dean talked about it. I think it was with Ariel Helwani. Yeah, it definitely was on the MMA Hour that Herb Dean was like, he really went into the rules about the mouth guard and like when action's going and shit. And Bisping was fucking knocked out. And I think at the end of that 5th round, Silva landed like a front kick that fucking sent Bisping's equilibrium to fucking, they're fighting in the UK. He sent that shit to Australia. So, like, Bisping, I didn't think he won that fight. I think in Vegas, it would have went to Silva. I think in Brazil, it definitely would have went to Silva. I think anywhere but the UK, and that's not calling the UK biased, but you definitely you have to understand, like, when you're rooting for someone so heavy, you gotta think, because the only other person that I know of, like off the top of the dome piece, that came out of Cage Warriors was Bisping and Conor McGregor. So that's kind of like the only 2 people really repping for that market. But when Chris beat Vitor and he said join the team, and I was like, yo, I'm all for it, Chris Weidman. And then Chris was the co-main for that, which I think he should have been main eventing that, since John Jones, that shit happened with him, and which I know it's a big deal, quote unquote, but like he's human, and like as like person that's fucked up in life, not to that extent, but you definitely have like car dings and shit like that, and like if he, and like he had like a bowl on him and shit like that, so like if you're just like smoking some buds, like getting a little reckless with it, bringing pieces in your car and shit, and you make like a stupid mistake. He said he was like partying the night before, so like you just kind of make like he was probably like doing something else, and then saw like the green light change and just went when it wasn't his green light, and he's like got the bowl in there and shit like that, and like his test just got leaked that he did blow beating up DC's bitch ass. And I'm kind of all over the place right now, but let me just wrap this up about Luke and Chris. And so I was pumped up after that fight, and Chris looked real good in that fight. And when it was DC Rumble, and Rumble rocked DC, I was like, yo, this shit's gonna end soon. Like, I was riding off like the hype of that fight, and honestly, like that sent me like pretty heavy into like that Chris Weidman fight, because I wanted to see John Jones, of course, but Chris Weidman, the way he set that off, like I was pumped up, like I was like training extra hard like that summer, like, and like like weightlifting like a motherfucker, doing like 3-4 days and shit like that. So I have fond memories of that fight. But when it came to like DC Rumble, after Rumble rocked DC, and DC just like he held Rumble against the fence until Rumble just got drained and then submitted him. And it wasn't even like a real submission. Rumble was just like, fuck, like I'm fuck this, I lost, whatever, I'll come back. But the way DC did that, and then he tried to get Herb Dean off of the rematch. Like, so you Daniel Cormier, get the paper belt, the fake ass interim belt, because that's not the real championship. Anyway, I'll get back into that later. But for DC to hold Rumble against the fence and then complain about that, whatever. He's scared. He stubbed his fucking toe and he's running. But back to Chris and Luke. So I got funked up. But I got fucking pumped up. I can't talk. I got fucking pumped up after that fight for Chris Weidman and shit. So his next fight was 194 against Luke, which was gonna be a good fight because Luke beat a lot of the top guys in this division. He beat Jacare, Tim Kennedy, like a lot of people in Strikeforce. I can't remember more off top, but he definitely was the top contender. So, I didn't really watch the Conor McGregor Chad Mendes fight live. I watched it after it happened, and it was like I wasn't too invested into Conor. But when 194 hit, and like that week that the UFC put together, the way they had like the Van Zant Northcutt prelim, I think it was the fight pass card and then when they did Aldo Mendez, I mean fucking shit, I don't know why I'm so mumbled right now, but when they fucking did Edgar Mendez, because I'm thinking about UFC 200, that's why I said that shit. But anyway, when they did Edgar Mendez, and Edgar just straight fucking slept Mendez real quick. Like, that was like a punch he didn't even expect to land. He was just like, when you throw it, and he just threw it, and then Chad went out. Because 6 months before that, his chin got checked hard by Conor. And the thing about the Aldo Mendez fight with the second fight, bro, Jose fucking rocked Chad Mendes at the end of the first after the bell. And I forget what it was, like maybe it was like some groin shots or some shit like that. But Aldo was like complaining to the ref whenever that happened, and then the ref tells Chad, bro, if you do that, I'm gonna take a point. And then fucking Aldo hits him with a hot 1-2 to the chin. And then, you see Chad just straight stiffen and drop up against the fucking cage. And his chin was like, you saw like the fucking, that recoil, and the ref didn't do shit. And I think like a little, not even a groin kick happened, but like, I think like it looked like it might have happened, and Aldo was just like, oh, ref. And then the fucking ref's like, I'll take a point away. And then he fucking slept Chad for like 20 seconds. And they didn't do anything about that. But anyway, so when that happened, like that whole build up to 194 was pretty fucking crazy. So, alright, yeah. And then when that happened with Chris and Luke, so it was the co-main. And the Jacare Yoel fight was just like whatever. It really felt like what it wasn't supposed to be, and it was the main card, and especially with the main event of the night before going that way, you thought it was just gonna like kind of fucking crescendo into this main event, but it really didn't until Chris and Luke fought. And when Chris and Luke fought, it was really off. And like like shit was landing, but it didn't look like the fight you expected. And coming off of the Yoel Jacare fight, I was like, shit, all right, whatever. And then when Weidman threw that terrible wheel kick, it was that beginning of the end, and I was like really hoping like Weidman could turn around, but like it is what it is, and I'm glad it didn't get stopped in the third round, but at the fourth when Luke had him out in the cage, and it was just like shit, yeah, it's done. And then Connor came and slept Jose in 13 seconds, and like that kind of really did the build on the card. So when when they announced all the next fights for the top of 2016, and when they did the Unstoppable press conference, you saw a different Chris Weidman. You saw a Chris Weidman who, what it looks like is like, regardless of however you feel about the loss, he hasn't said anything like anything you could call an excuse. Like, you could try and say the broken foot thing, but I don't think he would go out of his way to make up or exaggerate something about his first loss, which is easily verifiable. And it is his first loss. And it wasn't a straight knockout. So, I mean, if you look at, was it the fucking Lesnar Carwin fight where Carwin basically beat the shit out of Brock's face, and Brock came back and won that fight. So, I mean, I'm not saying anything about the fight that happened, or like Chris could have came back, or he couldn't have come back in that fight, or he could have. But the thing is, it didn't look like the Chris Weidman we've seen, and Luke Rockhold looked gassed, said he was on antibiotics, and it just wasn't the fight we wanted, and the belt changed hands. So from that point, I was one of the people that wanted to see a rematch. Being that I was a Chris Weidman fan, I was like, I would rather see the rematch, and I'd rather just see with the conditions good. And Weidman went on before the the fight, and he was like in studio guest with Ariel Helwani in the MMA hour, and he was talking about how like some, I tried to look into it but I couldn't find any article about it, but I mean, if you have an article, you'll leave it in the comments. But it was saying about like how his like wife's cousin got shot like a gajillion times by the cops. Like, I'm not even like, I mean, of course the unit of measurement's fucking exaggerated, but apparently they just like laid clips on clips on clips on into him. And I mean, that's like, if anyone has any more details on that, I want to read about that. But he was saying like he had all that going on, and he had a broken foot, and you got the title on the line. It's on a Conor McGregor pay-per-view. If he pulls out, like, they could have even done like a Luke Yoel for the interim belt. So you never would know like what would happen, which could have been a smarter move, but the UFC doesn't like that shit. So you kind of know there's going to be some difficulties or repercussions from doing that. So for them to run it back, and for Chris, who's the one who took the belt from Silva twice, it kind of seems fair that Luke has to take it and defend it as that, because that's what Chris did. You know what I mean? So with the fight being the way it was, and like out of respect for Weidman, I agree with that. But the Chris Weidman you've been seeing on the press conference at the Unstoppable, when he was like, "I'll rip your heart out, Luke. Enjoy that. Yeah. Get out of the clubs and come spend some time with me. Get out of the soccer stadiums and come hang with me." And I think that's the Chris people really want to see. At least I think it's dope because like I don't think it takes away from like him being the nice guy, the family guy, or anything like that. Just seems like a different role. It just seems like Chris is Chris. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you motherfuckers heard of a guy named Steven Wonderboy Thompson who just figured he fuck Johnny Hendricks up, who's gonna be fighting Rory McDonald. Chris Weidman's been like hanging with him every day. Like they're gonna, I think it's like Wonderboy's brother and Weidman's sister. I think that's what's happening. They got married or they're getting married, and like so they're basically family. So I mean, if you're training with Wonderboy, who realistically, if you think about it, I know he's probably, I don't think Wonderboy, he's definitely, because Luke is like 6'3" or 6'4". So I know he's not, I don't think he's as tall as that, but he's a, Wonderboy's definitely a welterweight. So he's probably walking around 190. Well, I would guess 190. So that's still above middleweight, so weight wise. But anyway, regardless of all that shit, just his striking alone, for Chris to adopt to that strike, you don't even know if he's brought in Mark Henry in his camp, so you don't know if he's really picking up like good striking, or his defensive striking moves and his counters are gonna get crazier. His wrestling's already good. His jiu-jitsu's already pretty good, because I remember that first Anderson Silva fight when they were on the ground, he was going for like a leg lock. So I know that Luke, his jiu-jitsu is good too. He submitted Lyoto Machida last. Like he gets a lot of rear naked chokes, but another thing is I've been watching some of the interviews they've been doing on the press runs. Luke, most of your wins are by submission via rear naked choke. And the one he's like, yeah, you know, he like kind of his argument was that like he put away Lyoto cleaner than Chris did, and Chris said he had a broken hand in that fight with Lyoto, but Luke said he put away Lyoto so much cleaner, and he took Lyoto's back and choked him out. But all right, so a side note to that, Brendan Schaub said that Lyoto wasn't himself during that fight, and like Leo, whatever, like that wasn't Leo. But anyway, regardless of all that, he took his back, choked him out, to my recollection. But in a recent press interview they did, they were together, and I forgot, it might have been for Fox Sports or some shit, but the lady was like, they weren't even like going at each other, but the lady was like kind of, you know, when someone is like a passive aggressive instigator, they're not, they like, she was like, oh, it's really tense, we don't have security, and they're just talking to each other. But anyway, and then Luke was trying to say like get like really deep. So this new champion Luke Rockhold is kind of like, I think Luke would be better off if he's just more himself, but he's trying to play like this, I guess it's more ego driven in the belt, but he's trying to play like this. Yeah, so, you know, I could just tell he broke, and you know, when it comes to the ground game, I'm just like on a whole nother level. Like Chris is good, but I'm the best. And like he's trying to do like this like cool, calm, collected, like kind of like, bro, like I wasn't even trying, and like, you know, kind of like from a very retrospective point of view and shit. And he's trying to say that, oh, I knew Chris Weidman broke when he took my back. And then like and it was like, bro, in order to rear naked choke someone out, you got to take their back. But anyway, so, you know, it was just like him trying to be like, take slick shots. It was him trying to be like, take the champion shots. Like, you know, when Ronda Rousey lost and Mayweather's like, I don't know what it's like to lose, but I would imagine, or some shit like that. So he's trying to throw like the like, oh, he mentally broke and shit like that. And and then like they Chris in the beginning was like, yeah, whatever. I was emotional at the press conference. I'll give you that, whatever. And then Luke was said something like, yo, Chris doesn't have like any sight. And and then Chris was like, what do you mean no sight? This is the guy. You're the one that doesn't have any sight. You didn't see Vitor knock you out, did you? And then like Luke was like, you could tell Luke was like, fuck. Like you could tell that was like Luke's been very vocal about how it's been eating him alive about that. And like he's trying to become I'm not saying anything against it, but he's trying to be like a martyr for peds in the sport. Like, I fought Vitor in Brazil and I paid the price, and I want Vitor. When he won the championship, he called out Vitor and he's like, I want Vitor on a silver platter. And it was like, well, like I get like I can respect you want to avenge the loss, but Vitor just fought, like, lost in a title fight for the belt in the first round. So I don't know what Vitor's ranking was at the time, but like you're gonna win the belt, and then you're gonna whatever, you called out the person you lost to. I can respect that, but. And then that shit with Yoel Romero happened with the peds and shit like that, and the tainted supplement, which, I agree with that, but so whatever, he's doing 6 months, which probably is the time he would have taken off anyway. So with the way it shaped up to be, it was like, might as well do the Weidman rematch. So they booked the rematch, and Chris came out with the personality he kind of should have been rocking with, the join the team personality, like that would you only saw that when like the adrenaline was rushing through Chris, like that kind of personality that's like, yo, that's a champ mentality, you know what I mean, like the New York Rocky. But Luke, and with Luke, he's not really capitalizing on the belt the way he can be. Like, if Conor McGregor could cross over like the way he did, Luke Rockhold should honestly be able to cross over pretty easily. Especially like he could easily like transition into movies and shit like that. Like imagine a motherfucking, if they never did the Transporter series, and they just get Luke Rockhold up in that bitch. So like that could probably work, but Luke is whatever. Luke, if you look at Luke as a pure fighter, it's whatever. But the fact that it's gonna get found out June 9th or 4th, sometime in June, whenever 199 is. But the way Chris is talking, we never seen Chris talk like that before. And objectively, it could be one of two things, or maybe a combination of both. It could be Chris broke, since he's never been he's been undefeated. He never lost the fight, and he lost to Luke, and he's like, I'm putting everything, all my chips in on the chance to get that belt back. Or he's like, he feels like he genuinely wasn't fighting like himself, and now he's upgraded his game, and he's like, I'm gonna talk all this shit, and then it's gonna be so much sweeter when I win, which is essentially the Conor McGregor factor, because you would just talk shit and win, and he got elevated so high. And So I think, and I think it was maybe at the Go Big press conference where Luke and Chris were going at it, and then Chris was like, "Oh yeah, I want you guys to remember him saying that," which kind of worked out more in Luke's favor, I believe, but I don't really remember what he said. But anyway, that's 199, and I think like the Fox card before that is Almeida Garbrandt, and both undefeated fighters. Cody No Love came out against jiu-jitsu guy and then slept him. He's an alpha male guy, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't think I know enough about Almeida to really make any calls about him. So those are one of the fights that if I catch it when it happens, I'll probably enjoy it. So for 199 is that, and I think I'm just gonna do brush over 198. Maybe I won't touch on that right now, but to get into 197, which is DJ Cejudo. I think, pretty sure Pettis Barbosa's on that card. And of course, the main event. I was gonna say Jones DC 2, but obviously it's Jones OSP. And I'm just going to start from the top and go in. And the position over here at Mastermind MMA Media on Daniel DC Cormier is this. I'll be very honest with you guys. I came in a John Jones fan. He was coming off the Glover win, I believe. And that was a beautiful creative fight by John. And DC was never really on my radar before that, so like I could give a fuck about DC then. And then they got into that brawl, and then the shit got so entertaining because you could just tell DC isn't the person DC projects himself to be is not who he is. It's a projection of what he would like to be viewed as. He wants, as a coach, he wants to be that kind of the tough father figure, like this young man has not changed. Like saying that shit at the Unstoppable press conference, like legit, like Carl Winslow shit. And I saw that picture with fucking with Carl Winslow with the strap across his fucking shoulders and John Jones, and I was like, yo, DC's fucking Carl Winslow. Like, I never thought about that shit. And even from like the smack talk, like, yo, so like Jones like comes to like playing the nice guy, like, I'd like to apologize to MGM Grand and all that. And then, like, when they cut to that off-air footage, I don't know if you noticed, but in the build-up, they had the legitimate footage of that. But the only thing I saw on YouTube before that was the leaked footage, or like someone recording the footage. So in the build-up to this fight, they used the like clips of the real footage. But it's like, "Hey, pussy, are you still there?" And he's like, "Oh, I wish and DC's like, "I wish I could just come into the next room and fucking spit on your face." And John's like, "I'd kill you. I'd absolutely kill you if you do that." He's like, John, you think I'm just going to sit here and let you kill me? Like, what kind of, like, you could tell he wants to say something with such gust and like that kind of like, oh shit moment, but he's just not clever enough to do it. And he just sounds he just sounds like such a bitch. Because at the Unstoppable, he's like, "People, I say to you, I have been sober." Like he's trying to sound like he's fucking Leonidas or something. "I say to you," and he tried to play like the John Jones never changed, or we lying to the people angle, and John's like, "What? I can't hear you." "Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, what? That I said that." And he's like, "You called me a pussy." And he's like, no, I said that you're my pussy and you'll forever be my pussy. And DC didn't know how to rebuttal to that. And he was like, are we lying to the people again, John? I'm like, no, motherfucker. He just straight up, he not only did he elaborate, but he verified specifically what he said to you. And I don't know where that counterpunch video is in full, but that bitch better come out soon. 'Cause that shit looked so... I mean, and the shitty thing is, like, I don't know if it's out. Like, please link it if the full thing is out. But, bro, now it's OSP. And to this whole thing about the belt. And the saying... them calling this belt the interim belt. I don't know if you guys saw... if you go to the MMM fighting on SBN... where Ariel Helwani did that hour-long or some shit like that with John live down in Albuquerque. And John said when all this shit happened, he met with Dana and Lorenzo, and they said to him, like, he said, like, I felt like if I said I was ready to go, they'll, like, the fight would go on. Because that DC Hump Fest was supposed to be fucking John Bones Jones versus Rumble Johnson. And the only thing about Rumble that scares me is that there is a chance. I'm not saying that if Rumble gets the belt, he holds the belt, and I'm not saying anything against John Jones, nor am I picking against Jones with Rumble, but, dude, Rumble hits like a motherfucking 18-wheel truck. He's got knockout power, and when you're just that powerful, there's always a chance. But I think Jones is smart enough to keep distance and be able to beat Rumble. But it was supposed to be that fight, and John said, if I fought that fight, man, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have stripped me. But I said I wasn't gonna fight, and they took the belt away. So it was more political in nature. But every fight fan knows that belt is Jonathan Jones. Regardless of hit and runs, regardless of anything, he's the great. And, let's keep it real. Right now, I'm 23 years old. And if I was a motherfucking world champion with all that press, and it's not even like any other sport, you're the baddest motherfucker in the world. In the light heavyweight division. And so he lived life. So what, man? Like, people live life. And it's his choice, whatever he wants to do. But whatever. He, quote-unquote, lost the belt. And it's not even like a Dominic Cruz losing of the belt. It's like John Jones fought in January of 2015. It's April 2016. Like a year and change, son? Really? So DC had a terrible performance against Rumble. DC almost got finished by Alexander Gustafsson. John Jones never almost got finished by Gus, and that was his closest fight to date. I'd say that and Vitor fucking hyperextending his arm. Even with the Chael Sonnen fight, if John didn't get that finish and they saw his toe, they would have ended it. So, DC, his belt isn't even real. Fabricio Verdum's belt, when he got it from Mark Hunt, even with Kane out, Verdum says, I view that as getting the belt, and I defended it against Kane. And in that situation, it's true. And another thing, Kane might have lost that rematch because we know he's fighting Travis at 200. And his excuse was the location. The location was his biggest market. With Zuffa's relationship with the MGM Grand, they could have done that in Vegas, no problem. But guess what? Now Verdum is champ. Kane had his shot at him again. Pulled out. Not saying anything against Kane or the injury. Stipe. I would have said Stipe or Overeem, but Stipe was impressive against Andre. And when that shot came, they announced it. It fell out in a good way. That fell out because that built Wonder Boy and gave Wonder Boy that spotlight. And, you know, it's going to be coming in time to keep 200, number 200. And, you know, so with the belt at light heavyweight, that John Jones's belt. He's coming back for another title defense. Whichever way you want to look at it. You could call it an interim belt, but that is the true belt. DC has the John Jones's away belt. Think about it. DC lost to Jones. Jones can't fight Rumble. DC steps up to fight Rumble. Humps him. Holds his bro, that belt is as real as Daniel Cormier's fucking third tooth. Or whichever number tooth is the tooth that's missing. So that belt doesn't matter. And the fact that DC's like, I'll help hey, I'm buddies with OSP. You could come down to AKA. I'll pay for you. And you could take the rest of my camp. Now, OSP is just coming off. If my memory serves me right, it was on the Wonder Boy card against Hendricks. He's coming off of a win against Rafael Fazal, whatever his name is. Who's the only person to beat Yoel in Strikeforce, I think. Or wherever it was. But I'm pretty sure he's the only person to beat Yoel. And OSP looked like he hurt his foot early in the fight. And it was a lot of like almost going for the kills and going it going to decision. And I remember reading that Fazal got cut. So, you know, OSP's ranked number 6. He took out a guy that's not even on the roster in the promotion anymore. Rashad is 7. And, you know, even if you look, all right, let's look at the UFC rankings. So if you look at light heavyweight, the Rumble would have been my shot. Would have been what I preferred. It's what we should have seen. It's a dangerous fight for John, but it you know, he was prepping for him anyway before the shit happened. It could have been a refresher's course and then a camp, and I think that would have been the fight. And I heard AJ saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait," because DC's bitch ass was trying to show off his limp, and he pulled out like a bitch. Rumble said he was going to wait and be ready. He was in camp. And then he said he had some dental procedure. He couldn't put a mouthpiece in for 3 weeks. I say you don't spar. You just hit pads, do your training, and get in there. Because on that same token, Rumble was already game planning for Jones anyway. Refresher course and just go in. But whatever. Would have been the fight I preferred, but it's not it. So Let's see the light heavyweight ranking. At paper fake tooth champion. You know how that guy's like Nick the Tooth? It should be fucking Daniel Cormier lack a tooth. Or whatever, man. You know what I'm trying to say. Shit is fake as fuck. Like that belt. So I put champion John Jones. So that would make that fake belt number 1 ranked. Was that DC? Number 2, you got Rumble. Number 3, Gus. We know what happened. He beat number 3. He beat number 4, Glover. He beat Ryan Bader. Then you have OSP at number 6. He beat Rashad Evans, who's number 7. He got the belt when he was a child from Shogun, who's at number 8. And then you're left with, at 9, 10, and 11, Jimmy Manoa, who got knocked out by Rumble, Lil Nog, and Patrick Cummins. Would you rather Jones coming? So, he already beat DC. Rumble's gonna be the next fight after OSP. OSP's the only one left. So might as well clean out the division. Because if you look at so Luke said if DC loses, he would like to fight John, which is what he heavily hinted at. But, my personal pick is Weidman winning. Then there'll be a trilogy waiting. But I would rather them put that third win on the back burner and do Weidman Jones at MSG. So I'm from New York, so I'm gonna the first show at MSG with Chris Weidman and John Jones. That show would be crazy. Or Jones going up to heavyweight, which I would rather. Weidman's really ran through the division as well. Not as much as Luke, though. Luke has definitely fought more of the elite in the top 10 than Chris. But Chris dethroned Anderson Silva, the Spider. So that history has a big thing to do with it. If Rockhold, I don't know the chronological order, if Rockhold could have been in that position to fight Anderson, but if he did, Luke would have been a lot. Luke winning against Anderson obviously would have had him be a bigger star than him winning the belt from Chris. But since Chris is the one that got the Anderson win at Anderson's peak, I would rather Chris John Jones at 205, so that if just forget the Luke Jones fight. Just the Chris Jones, I want to see that at 205. So I don't want to see Jones cut to middleweight, but I would rather just see Jones stay and then Chris go up and meet him. And then John Jones stays, fights Rumble, and then goes up to heavyweight. Top 5 heavyweights: Kane, Stipe, Overeem, Rothwell, Dos Santos. Dos Santos isn't the same. Top 6, Arlovsky's in the top 6. Dos Santos after Kane isn't the same. Ben Rothwell, he's doing good now, but he's such an awkward striker. I think the reason why he's so far along now is really his consistency and sticking to the game. And he's probably like that go-go choke. He's probably got that shit down. So, John Jones, with Verdum's jiu-jitsu and his striking, I still see Jones winning. And I would honestly, the reason I would want the Weidman fight before that is so they could argue that John Jones is a 3 division champion. Nate Diaz said to Conor, or in the press, I am the featherweight champion. And guess what? Nate is the featherweight champion. If RDA Conor went down, Conor wins, he gets 2 divisions belts. RDA wins, he stays only the lightweight champ. He doesn't get that featherweight crown. So only Conor has something to gain. And RDA has everything to lose. So I think Nate's the featherweight champ, man. So, this is running a little long. I'm going to talk about more shit in my next video, but this is Mastermind MMA. Just want to give you my stance on some of this shit, my picks on 199 and 197. And yeah, so I'm going to be uploading more videos on this shit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Subscribe if you like, and that's about it, man. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Peace.